Don't let me forget to do shorts. Okay. Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the UFC London Co-Main Event between Arnold Allen and Dan Hooker. Okay, where do we start with this? So Arnold Allen is 17-1. Dan Hooker is 21-11. Arnold has been a featherweight. You know, this is his weight class. He's been campaigning here for a while. Dan Hooker has not been a featherweight for a good time. So let me go back. So his last fight as a featherweight was 2016. So it's worth noting with Dan Hooker because he does have what, 10 losses on his record, 11 losses on his record. He had a few losses early on in his career. You know, not everybody starts their pro career when they're prepared to be a professional. Some people pick up losses all the way through and then they kind of arrive at a more finished product later on. Dan Hooker is definitely one of those kind of people, and where the finished product is, where his peak is, I'm not sure. We may not have seen it yet, so you know we've got to keep that in mind. But through his early career, you know, he picked up a couple of losses, you know, kind of learnt the game as he was going, but always constantly improving, doing damage to people, cutting people. That was his, you know, something that I remember seeing in his career before he made his debut against Ian Entwistle. So he alternated wins and losses as a featherweight when he joined the UFC. So he joined the UFC in 2014, stopped Ian Entwistle in the first round, then he lost a decision to Blanco. Then he won a fight by stoppage, then he lost a decision to Yair Rodriguez. Then he won a fight in the first round, then he lost a decision to Jason Knight. So you can see this pattern here. He's either finishing guys or they're grinding him out to a decision. And at that point, when he'd lost to Jason Knight, so he's now 3-3 in the UFC. He made the decision to go up to a lightweight, and he got Ross Pearson in his first fight, which is a tough test for anybody. But he went on a 4-fight win streak. Ross Pearson, Mark Casey, Jim Miller, and Gilbert Burns stopped all of them. That was a great run of fighters. You know, I mean, they get better all the time. I mean, Jim Miller's still campaigning at 360 fights in the UFC, and Gilbert Burns is, you know, a top contender. He lost to Edson Barbosa following that, and that was another turning point in my eyes, because that was him enjoying the fight more than trying to get the win. You know, one thing that you don't do against Edson Barbosa or any striker of his caliber is stand there and absorb punishment like he did. I mean, the point where he took that body shot in the third round and went down, like I was ready for him to just take a knee at that point, because it was like he was trying to prove something to everybody regarding his toughness. He was trying to prove to people that he didn't have quit, and I don't think that was ever in question in the first place. But his approach in that fight was detrimental to him, and the reason I think that's important is because that could be the same situation here against Arnold Allen. Not only is he taking on, you know, someone that's quite happy and comfortable to outpoint you to a decision, which, you know, is not what Dan Hooker wants. He wants a scrap. He wants a brawl. He wants to make it bloody, and he wants to try and find a finish, and he likes taking a lot of risks. He fights to fight. He doesn't necessarily fight to win. And if Arnold's playing it clever, what we might see is him cruising around the octagon and beating up Dan Hooker, who's basically a punchbag that's walking forward trying to engage. Like, he might not get that fight out of Arnold Allen that he's looking for, so he needs to be a lot smarter with it. Now, after the loss to Edson Barbosa, he went on another 3-fight win streak. James Vick by stoppage in the first round, then he beat Iaquinta by decision, and then Paul Felder, which was one of the best fights I've ever been witness to. A 5-round split decision. It was an absolute scrap. And at the end of the first round, you know, I'm watching this from the commentary booth thinking to myself, I don't know how Paul Felder's going to stay standing for another 20 minutes with the damage that he'd already received on his leg. It was a really slick performance. But then the second round, Hooker came out and started to engage Felder in a range that was more comfortable to him. Now, the thing is with Arnold Allen, he's a physical specimen, and he's flying under the radar. Jamie and I were just talking about this, actually. It's like he doesn't fight as often as a lot of these guys. When he does fight, he doesn't really say a great deal, but he is a brute. Like, he's got this baby face, but he looks like an action figure. He packs a lot of power, and I think that at some point very soon, I mean, he's 17-1 in his career. He's still a young man. at some point very soon, he's going to find his feet in the octagon and he's going to start to lay people out. And if Dan Hooker's traveling halfway around the world and having a rough weight cut going back down to 145, I don't know whether he is or not, but traveling and weight cutting is miserable at the best of times. And traveling and going back down to a weight class that's 10 pounds away from what you have been for the past, 7 years? I mean, it's a long time. Sorry, 6 years. Like, your body grows, Dan Hooker's 32 now. There's a point when you're in your late 20s, or at least in my experience, when you kind of gain sort of 5 kilos, a few pounds, and it stays with you. You're just bigger. It's like that man strength. And I don't know whether Dan Hooker has anticipated how difficult it might be to go back down to featherweight, as well as traveling halfway around the world to do it. I mean, I know he's already in the UK now, but like, it would take sometimes like 2, 3, 4 weeks to start feeling yourself after a journey like that. So that's a big question for me. The other thing is Arnold Allen doing good boxing work, good body work, which will slowly deplete him, chipping into his legs and just kind of beating him up from the ground up. So Dan Hooker, as he's walking forward and he's trying to engage, he's basically just taking damage as he's walking. Now, Dan Hooker, if he decides to play a smarter game and uses his feints a bit more, like we've seen from City Kickboxing, he might be able to draw the counters out of Arnold Allen before actually engaging. And that could be really problematic for Arnold, because he's going to be co-main event in London, a big opportunity for him. He's fighting Dan Hooker, which is definitely the biggest fight of his career so far. You've got to think, in Arnold Allen's mind, he's kind of built this up a little bit. This is a big opportunity for him. So he might be a little bit too trigger happy, a bit too eager to go. And if Dan Hooker comes in kind of calm and starts using those feints, we might see Arnold Allen trying to bite a little bit. The other method in which Arnold Allen could take this is he could decide to grapple, because of course, we've seen Dan Hooker in recent fights, struggle on the ground. Of course, the Islam Makhachev fight is what I'm referring to, and I'm not saying that Arnold Allen might be able to do what Islam Makhachev can do to fighters generally, but I think a hurt, a damaged, a tired, a rough weight cut Dan Hooker, it might be much easier for Arnold Allen to muscle around. I mean, Arnold Allen's the kid that is doing 300-pound bench press in his backyard with his brother and his dad, and that's been his life. They've always done it. There's some great footage, great documentaries out there where he's kind of sitting on this bench with like a rusted lifting platform around him, and he's it's just that's kind of what him and his family did. They got strong. He is an incredibly strong physical individual. And it might be an option for Arnold Allen, especially given the fact that he trains at TriStar, is to be able to put his opponent on the floor and ground and pound him, beat him up. There's a lot to be learned from that. The one thing that we don't want to see from Arnold is him brawling with Dan Hooker, because he's got great elbows, great knees. He can do a lot of damage, can Dan Hooker, especially in the ranges that's comfortable to him. And I think the pressure of this event could be weighing a little bit heavy on Arnold Allen. He's a young lad in the co-main event, UFC London. Like I said, it's a big opportunity for him. So with that in mind, let's just have a quick look down the stats, because this is something else that's going to play into Dan Hooker's advantage. So, of course, the experience, 17-1 for Arnold Allen, 21-11 for Dan Hooker. A lot more losses, but a lot more experience. A lot more fights at a high level as well against higher level opponents. So 5'8" for Arnold Allen, 6 foot for Dan Hooker. So a height advantage as well as a 5-inch reach advantage. That's something that could be really prevalent if Dan Hooker decides to use it intelligently and not close the range down where he's into a brawl. Like, that height and reach, he could feel very overbearing, especially if Arnold's backed up against the fence, southpaw, backed up against the fence, and Dan Hooker's just kind of jabbing him and teeping him. There's a lot of good opportunities for Dan Hooker to use his physical attributes again in this weight class. Maybe more so than he was able to at lightweight. Higher striking output for Dan Hooker, as we know he's got a blazing pace when the fight gets going. Decent striking accuracy, nearly 50%, but takes a lot of shots in the process. So as you can see, Arnold Allen's defense, 66%, is better. again, that is dependent on whether he can maintain space from Dan Hooker or whether he decides he wants to have a scrap and get that fight of the night bonus. Fairly even takedown defense for both of them. Arnold Allen 76% and Dan Hooker 78%. The one other thing that we need to mention is Arnold Allen's last stoppage win, which was the ninja choke over Mads Burnell. It was a lovely finish, and he might be able to set himself up for this, especially if, say, he's hurt Dan Hooker or he's cut him or something. I mean, we've seen Dan Hooker bloodied before. There is scar tissue there to be worked on. Imagine, that is a loud engine, isn't it? If Dan Hooker does decide he wants to level change and try and grapple with Arnold Allen, maybe he does feel like he's the bigger fighter, the more imposing fighter coming down a weight class, or maybe he's been hurt, he's been rocked, and he just kind of needs a moment. Arnold Allen attacking next, wrapping stuff up, will put him to sleep in no time because he's got a hell of a squeeze on him. The young man's got some biceps on him, so you don't want him wrapping around on your neck. Other than that, I mean, I think this one could absolutely steal the show. In order for Arnold Allen to get the win and come out looking, keeping a baby face and not needing some stitches, is to play it very smart and to use his feints and his counter punching. Ooh. And maybe even try and grapple a little bit. For Dan Hooker, I'd like to see him return to a more focused and technical mindset. I love it when he brawls because the fights are fun, but I would also like to see him, run for a belt at some time. So having a smarter, calmer performance might be just what he needs here to get the win over someone so tough like Arnold. Hell of a fight. I can't wait to watch it. I really can't. I'm looking forward to it. Big fan of both of these guys. I would not like to pick it, so I'm going to sit right on the fence on this one. I'll be looking forward to watching it. I'll catch you next time.